In the quiet, wooded hills of western Pennsylvania, there is a stretch of road near the Piney Fork Tunnel that locals avoid after midnight. For over 70 years, teenagers have dared each other to drive out there, kill the engine, and wait in the pitch black. They are looking for the Green Man, or as some call him, Charlie No-Face. The legend says that he is a monster, a humanoid creature with glowing green skin and a face that looks like it was melted off in the fires of hell. They say if you see him walking along the shoulder of the road, your car will stall, and he will reach out with glowing claw-like hands to take your soul. But the most terrifying thing about Charlie No-Face isn't the ghost story told around campfires. It's the fact that he was entirely, undeniably real. I remember the first time I heard about him. It was a humid night in the late 70s. My older cousin took me out to Route 151. He told me that Charlie was an urban myth, a boogeyman created to keep kids from wandering too far into the woods. He said Charlie had no eyes, no nose, and only one ear. He said his skin emitted a radioactive green light because he had been struck by lightning or fallen into a vat of chemicals. We sat there for hours, the woods pressing in on us. Every time a branch snapped, we jumped. Every time the wind whistled through the tunnel, we thought it was his breath. We never saw him that night, but many people did. And what they saw was far more haunting than any monster.
From the 1940s through the 1980s, hundreds of residents in Beaver County reported seeing a figure walking along the dark roads at night. The descriptions were always the same: a man in a coat, walking slowly, with a face that looked like a blank canvas of scar tissue. Groups of people would go Charlie hunting. They would drive slowly down Route 151, scanning the bushes with flashlights. Sometimes they would find him. They would see a tall, thin figure stepping out of the shadows. The green glow, people reported, it wasn't radiation. It was the reflection of their own headlights hitting his pale, scarred skin and the high-visibility safety vest he sometimes wore. Most people would scream and floor the accelerator the moment they saw him, but some were braver. They would pull over. They would offer him a cigarette or a beer. Charlie, or the man they called Charlie, wasn't aggressive. He was shy. He would stand at the window, his breath heavy, because he had no nose to breathe through. He would accept the cigarette, tuck it into the hole where his mouth used to be, and nod a silent thank you. He became a local celebrity, but a tragic one. He was a man turned into a monster by public imagination, forced to live his life in the gaps between midnight and dawn.
His real name was Raymond Robinson, and his story didn't begin with a curse or a chemical spill. It began with a bird's nest. In 1919, Raymond was only 9 years old. He was a normal, happy kid. One afternoon, he was climbing the Wallace Run Bridge to see a bird's nest when he accidentally touched a trolley wire carrying 22,000 volts of electricity. The blast was so powerful it was heard blocks away. Doctors said it was a miracle he lived, but the cost was unimaginable. The electricity had literally melted his face. He lost both eyes, his nose, and his right arm. His lips were gone. He was left with a face that the world couldn't bear to look at. For the next 70 years, Raymond lived in a small house with his family. He spent his days listening to the radio, learning to read Braille, and making doormats and wallets to sell. He was a kind, intelligent man who loved his family deeply. But Raymond had a problem. He loved the outdoors. He loved the feeling of the night air on his skin. But he knew that if he went out during the day, he would cause car accidents or make children scream in terror. So, out of a profound sense of kindness for the people who feared him, Raymond chose to become a creature of the night. He would wait until the sun went down, grab his walking stick, and trek for miles along the quiet highways just to feel a sense of freedom. As Raymond got older, the Charlie hunting became more cruel. People would throw things at him from passing cars. They would beat him up just to say they fought the monster. One night, a group of men even kidnapped him, drove him miles away, and dumped him in a ditch just for a laugh. Yet, despite the cruelty, Raymond never stopped his walks. He never became the monster they wanted him to be. He remained the boy who just wanted to see a bird's nest, trapped in a body that looked like a nightmare. Raymond Robinson passed away in a nursing home in 1985 at the age of 74. When he died, the sightings stopped. The Green Man was gone. Today, the Piney Fork Tunnel is still there. People still go there looking for a thrill. But if you ever find yourself on a dark road in Pennsylvania and you see a figure in the distance, remember Raymond. Remember that sometimes the things we fear as monsters are just broken people hiding in the dark because the world was too cruel to let them live in the light. Next time you hear a whistle in the dark, don't look for a ghost. Look for the man who just wanted to walk in peace. In 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus thought they had achieved the American dream. They purchased a beautiful 6-bedroom Dutch colonial revival home at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. It was a quiet, affluent neighborhood where kids rode bikes and neighbors knew each other's names. But 3 days after closing the deal, before they had even moved in, Derek went to the mailbox. Among the bills and advertisements was a thick white envelope addressed in heavy, blocky handwriting to the new owner. Inside was a letter that would turn their dream into a living nightmare. It didn't start with a greeting. It started with a claim of ownership. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, the letter read. As it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. Derek felt the hair on his neck stand up. But the letter got more specific. It mentioned their Honda minivan. It mentioned the contractors working on the house. The person writing this wasn't just a prankster. They were standing close enough to see everything. The Broadduses went to the police, but there was little they could do. Then came the second letter. This one was more aggressive. It mentioned their children by name and by their nicknames. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy what it was supposed to be. The voice of the Watcher growled from the page. Tsk, tsk, tsk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3. Is there more on the way? The letter continued with a sentence that chilled Maria to the bone. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. The family stopped bringing their children to the house. Derek began spending nights there alone, sitting in the dark, watching the shadows of the neighbors' houses. Was it the retired couple next door? Was it the eccentric family behind them who kept lawn chairs pointed directly at the Brodus's windows? Everyone was a suspect. Every smile from a neighbor felt like a mask. The Watcher seemed to know the layout of the house perfectly. In the third letter, the writer asked, "Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. I am pleased to know your names now, and the name of the young blood you have brought to me." Derek hired private investigators. They used high-tech cameras and even DNA testing on the envelopes. They found that the DNA belonged to a female, but it didn't match anyone in the national database. The Westfield police questioned the neighbors, specifically the Langford family, who had lived next door since the 1960s. One of the sons was described as odd, but there was never enough evidence to make an arrest. The Brodus family tried to sell the house, but news of the Watcher had leaked to the press. No one wanted to buy the Stalker house. They were stuck paying a massive mortgage for a home they were too terrified to live in. They even considered tearing it down, but the neighborhood board blocked their plans. The house at 657 Boulevard was becoming a prison of wood and brick.
5 years later, in 2019, the Brodus family finally managed to sell the house for a loss of over $400,000. They just wanted it to be over. They handed a note to the new owners, along with a photograph of the handwriting, just in case a new letter arrived. To this day, the identity of the Watcher remains one of America's most famous cold cases. Some people in town actually accused the Brodus family of writing the letters themselves to get out of a bad real estate deal. But why would they lose nearly $500,000 and ruin their lives for a hoax? The house at 657 Boulevard still stands. The new owners haven't reported any letters yet. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the trees of Westfield, people wonder if someone is still sitting in a darkened window nearby, pen in hand, waiting for the young blood to return. The scariest thing about the Watcher isn't the threat of violence. It's the fact that you can never truly know who is watching you or why.
We've all heard the story. A couple checks into a cheap motel, notices a foul smell, and discovers a body hidden under the mattress. It's the kind of story you tell to scare friends during a road trip. A classic urban legend, right? But what if I told you that this nightmare has happened in real life, not once, but dozens of times? And sometimes it doesn't happen in a rundown shack, but in the heart of the most famous cities in the world. My name is Sarah, and in the summer of 2003, a case out of Las Vegas changed the way I look at hotel rooms forever. Las Vegas is a city built on illusions, bright lights, expensive perfumes, and the promise of luxury. But behind the gold leaf and the neon, there are shadows, and in those shadows, things can stay hidden for a very long time. It started with a couple checking into a popular hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. They were there for a weekend of fun. They entered their room, dropped their luggage, and immediately noticed something was off. There was a smell. It was faint at first, sweet yet heavy, like rotting fruit mixed with wet copper.
The couple called the front desk. The manager apologized, claiming it was probably a plumbing issue or a strong cleaning chemical. They sent up a maid who sprayed a heavy dose of floral air freshener. For an hour, the room smelled like roses, but as the chemical scent faded, the underlying rot returned, stronger than before. They tried to ignore it. They went out to the casinos, had dinner, and returned late at night. By now, the smell was thick. It felt like it was coating the back of their throats. They looked everywhere. They checked the air vents. They checked the mini-fridge. They even sniffed the drains in the bathroom. Everything seemed clean. Exhausted, they decided to just sleep and demand a new room in the morning. They climbed into the large king-sized bed, but as they lay there, the heat from their bodies seemed to activate the odor. It was coming from directly beneath them. One of them noticed that the mattress felt uneven, slightly lumpy. They spent 8 hours sleeping on that bed, breathing in the air of that room, convinced it was just an old hotel being old.
The next morning, the smell was unbearable. It was no longer a mystery. It was an assault on their senses. The husband lost his patience. He grabbed the corner of the heavy mattress and told his wife to help him lift it. They thought maybe a previous guest had left some food behind, or a dead rodent had crawled into the frame. They pulled the mattress back, and then the world stopped. Wedged into the hollow space of the box spring was a woman, or what was left of one. She had been there for several days. The desert heat of Nevada, combined with the hotel's climate control, had accelerated the decomposition. She was dressed in evening clothes, her eyes staring blankly at the wooden slats of the bed they had just been sleeping on. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar cases have been documented in Florida, New Jersey, and Kansas City. In many of these cases, the killers choose the hotel bed because they know that in a busy hotel, people want to believe the best. They want to believe the smell is just old pipes. They want to believe the lump in the bed is just a bad mattress.
The couple in Las Vegas was never the same. Think about it, the intimacy of a bed, the place where you are most vulnerable, being shared with a corpse. The police eventually caught the killer, a man who had met the victim at a nearby bar and used the room to hide his crime, knowing the high turnover of guests would buy him time to escape the state. The next time you walk into a hotel room, don't just look at the view from the window. Don't just check the minibar. Take a deep breath.
Feel the mattress, because hotel rooms are transient places. Thousands of people pass through those doors, and everyone leaves something behind. Usually, it's just a forgotten toothbrush or a stray sock, but sometimes the person who was there before you never actually left. Sweet dreams, and remember, if the room smells like roses and rot, don't wait until morning to leave.